This too shall pass. Four words that on their own aren't really significant, but when placed together like that can be immensely powerful. I remember hearing them being said by the actor Tom Hanks a few years ago during a roundtable discussion with some fellow actors. The context revolves around what advice he would give to his younger self, and he answered, "I wish I'd known that this too shall pass." He goes on to explain that when you were feeling angry and pissed off, this too shall pass. Conversely, he points out that if you are feeling good and like you know all the answers, this too shall pass. For the sake of this video, I'll be referring to this phrase in association with tough times and hardships. Last night I was visited by an ex-girlfriend of mine. We broke up in the latter part of last year for reasons I won't divulge, but ultimately it came down to a choice. One of the hardest choices I've ever had to make in life, but one that I made as honestly as I could despite the outcome. Aside from a swell of emotion at the time, we remained civil and agreed to try and be friends, but as the new year dawned we hadn't spoken since. We were simply two people who were once in a relationship now on diverging paths. Cut to last week when I received a message out of the blue from her asking if I would be free in the next 2 weeks to give each other some clothes back and maybe catch up. The message took me by surprise, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't nice to hear from her. I responded with a day as well as saying it was good to hear from her. She mirrored the latter part of my response and included a smiling emoji. Nothing anybody else would probably see as significant. Heck, I'm sure millions of that particular one are sent every single day. But to a guy who had just heard from an ex-girlfriend whom he had the most significant feelings for in his life, that smiling emoji caused me in turn to smile myself. The week passed by and every day I was thinking about the moment I would see her again for the first time in almost a year. Would it be awkward, or would she still be comfortable around me? Would it be a straight swap for the clothes, or would we reminisce? Would we laugh, cry, or just be civil human beings? On the day, leading up to her arrival, I was sat on the couch reading the latest book I've enthralled myself with when I heard a car reach the end of the driveway. My heart started racing and I had to control my breathing. I heard the car door open, footsteps over the gravel of the driveway, ascension on the steps out front, and finally a knock on the door. Having controlled myself enough to be present in the moment, I opened the door to the familiar, beautiful face of a girl I once loved. I let her in, whereupon she gave me back my clothes. After placing them in my bedroom, I returned and gave her a hug before we both sat on the couch, something we had done countless times before. For the next couple of hours we spoke like it was old times, reminiscing about what we'd been up to. I told her about my new job, she told me about her holiday, and the conversation flowed naturally. I felt comfortable and so did she. We both laughed when the situation called for it, and I slipped in some cheekily inappropriate dialogue to elicit further laughs, a level of comfort you only have with someone when you have come to know them on an intimate level. After a couple of hours we noted the time and she gestured it was getting late, so I retrieved her clothes for her. From there I walked her to the door and once again we hugged. However, this hug was different. It wasn't one of those 1-second hugs you give someone you see on a regular basis. Nor was it a 2-second hug reserved for those you care deeply for, but see only at intervals. This hug lasted a long time. Two ex-lovers who had strong feelings for one another saying goodbye yet again. Neither of us wanted to give it up. It felt familiar, comfortable, calming. It felt right. But I knew it couldn't last forever. We were no longer a couple. I made that difficult decision last year to end it. So I released my arms from around her and bade her goodnight. As I closed the door behind her, I slumped slowly to the ground. I could hear the engine of her car firing up, idle for a moment, and then disappear down the driveway. And then, I began to cry. I knew seeing her again would make me emotional, but I didn't realise just how strongly it would impact me. Memories of the times we were together flooded my mind, which kept the tears streaming. I sat against that door crying for a long time. Eventually, through the collage of long past moments came a familiar voice. This too shall pass. Mr. Hanks had appeared through the melancholy to remind me that the struggles I am feeling at this very moment would eventually fade away. And you know what? He was exactly right. This morning when I woke up I was feeling a little more optimistic. The emotional blow from last night hadn't completely left my system, but it had subsided critically. I was able to think clearly about my situation and remind myself of the choice I made that forced us to go our separate ways. Although I still miss the times we had spent together, I felt more assured that the decision I made was honest and true to myself. I don't know what the future holds between me and her. Maybe we'll find a way to remain friends and still be part of each other's lives. Maybe we'll go our separate ways only to find our paths crossing again somewhere down the line. Maybe we do have a future together. Or maybe last night was the last time I will ever see her. Regardless of what happens, what I do know is that I have felt my share of pain during that relationship, and aside from the events of last night, all of it has passed. Like a crashing wave retreating back to the sea. When you apply this thought to your own life, you'll begin to realise that Mr. Hanks is exactly right. Think about a time in your childhood when you were scared or in pain. Maybe you had a nightmare or broke a bone. Does the pain of that incident still hurt? What about when you were going through your teenage years and endured your first love and heartbreak? Does that still hurt? Maybe you were fired from a job, lost a sporting event, or a best friend moved away. All things that can cause pain and discomfort, but all I would wager have since passed. So the next time you are feeling down, keep your chin up and try to think of Tom Hanks telling you this too shall pass. Maybe he's saying it as Woody from Toy Story, Chuck Nolan from Castaway, Forrest Gump, Captain Phillips, or even the character he played in The Terminal. However you choose to hear it, always remember that time heals all wounds, and that this too shall pass.